All right. So, Alex, we were having a very interesting conversation before I decided to turn on the recording. So, everybody who's listening, Alex and I work together at Direct PayNet. Alex has been writing my blog and a lot of different writing projects for Direct PayNet. And I'm right now in search for an executive assistant, and I've been interviewing. So, I'll just kind of continue the conversation where we were at. Alex asked me, Alex, you asked me how is the interview process going? How is the headhunting going for an executive assistant? So I wanted to give you a couple of stats on my hiring process. I think it's going to make everybody laugh a little bit, and also it's a little bit sad at the same time, to be honest. So essentially, as I was saying earlier, Alex, I posted the job less than 2 weeks ago. A lot of people are dissuaded for working for, a smaller company like mine. Although we've been in business for over 15 years. So, safety is there. So I basically took a look at the market in my local area and saw what people are paying for EAs. And I decided to up that by 10%, just so I can try to get the best candidates that I can get, just because the salary is going to be a little bit higher than what other people are offering. So in less than 2 weeks, I received 350 applications. Wow. Can you believe that? Isn't that wild? It's
a bit too much.
Yeah, and at first I was going to use a recruiter, but the last time I tried to hire with a recruiter, I just wasn't happy, and I felt like I had to intervene so much. So I said, let me try to do this myself by posting a couple of ads and weeding through a few people. Now, the interesting thing is to weed out people, just because HR is not my full-time job. I don't have 5 hours a day to look through candidates and so forth. So I did something very interesting. I said, what are the main qualifications for an executive assistant? And let me see if I can try to test somebody or, kind of get a little bit of information through the application process on who these people are and, what kind of qualifications they have and so forth. So to be an executive assistant, one of the main things you need to be very attentive to detail, right?
Yeah.
Basically, this is like my right arm, right? Like this is somebody who's going to be given instructions and told to, follow this, do this. And there's a lot of different things. So they have to be quick and they have to follow instructions, right? Do you agree with that? Like, do you think that an EA has to be somebody who's very attention to detail, or is there another quality maybe that I missed?
No. I think you have to be organized and attentive.
Yeah.
That's part of the job.
Part of the job, right? So I was like, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write just like a little instruction at the bottom of the ad, just so I can try to weed out as many people as possible and just maybe hear the tone of what people are saying and so forth. So what I did is on the application, at the end of the application, I wrote, in order to apply, please write the word nimble on as the subject title, like nimble.
Simple.
I feel like that's pretty simple. So I wrote that. And then I wrote one other instruction. I just said, write me 2 or 3 sentences about one of the biggest challenges you faced in your career and like what you did to overcome it. Like how maybe something you did at a job. Like I'm just paraphrasing here. I wrote like a nice little sentence. I just basically wanted to test somebody's, grammar and their English. I just wanted like 2 sentences. I did nothing too long. So that was the only requirement that I put out there. The job is, a full-time position, and it pays 10% more than what everybody else is paying. All I'm asking is to write nimble on the subject title and then just write me 2 sentences. And obviously, you have ChatGPT, you have all these AI softwares. So you can, even if you don't know how to write very well, it's pretty easy to write 2 sentences about something. So here is the wild part of all this. So I got about 350 applications.
Right.
Out of the 350 applications, like LinkedIn will have some qualification questions that people have to answer. I put in like about 5 questions. I'm asking for 3 years experience, which is I mean, nothing, right? That 3 years experience, you could be like 26 years old and have 3 years experience. So not much. 3 years experience in a previous role as an EA or some kind of assistant job.
Right.
I'm asking for people to have a driver's license because I need them to do a couple of random things. Yeah, I'm in North America. Pretty much everybody drives here. I know in
Yeah.
Europe and stuff, it's a little bit different, but here it's common. And then I asked for like 2 years of experience with bookkeeping. So very like it could be pretty much a junior person because I'm not asking for 10 or 20 years of experience. So those questions they have to just go through. And I also asked if if the person has experience with like G Suite tools like Google Docs, Gmail,
Sure.
which in this day and age, if you don't know
Who
how to use
doesn't?
Google, yeah, like if you don't know how to use Google products, I mean, I have zero words for you. Like you really need to know how to use G Suite. Like, I mean, who doesn't know how to use a Gmail account or Google Drive and all this stuff? So I felt
Right.
like that would be like a pretty much everybody would say yes. Funny enough, like half the people said no. And I'm like, you don't know how to use Gmail? Like what? And I'm like, is it A, they didn't understand the question? Because it says,
Right. That's what
are
I
you
was thinking.
I mean, are you familiar with Google Suite products? And I
Right.
wrote like Gmail, Google Docs, like in parentheses. No, what is like it's 2025. What the hell's going on, right? So that's pretty much it. So out of the 350 applicants, 150 didn't qualify based on those questions.
Wow.
I'm like, whoa, what are you doing applying for an EA job if you don't know how to use G Suite and you haven't, ever worked as an EA for a couple of years,
But it also makes me wonder what they have been using because everybody's written like a Word document, a Google Doc.
I mean, I
You've
guess a
never you've
lot,
never written anything?
I think a lot of people are using Microsoft, but I feel like you should be smart enough to know that it's pretty much the same thing. So you should
I
just
would have just
answer
said
yes.
yes, even
There
if
you
I
go.
preferred Microsoft.
It doesn't
It's the same
matter,
thing.
right? GDoc and Word and
Yeah.
Google Sheets
Excel
and
and Sheets, they're
Excel,
all the
it's
same.
all the same thing. And then Gmail, I mean, some people are using Outlook, but like, I mean, what, like, doesn't everybody have a Gmail email address
Right.
and like as their personal? Anyway, it's wild, but 150 people were not qualified based on that. So they were kind of automatically rejected from there. I mean, I needed a little bit of, a couple of years of experience and a couple of things. Now, out of the 200, um, only 8 people followed the instruction, which was put the subject word, in the subject line when you're applying, put the word nimble and
Wow.
write 2 sentences.
8 people.
8.
I mean, it's a great way to weed it out. 350 sounded overwhelming at
Yep.
first for one person who's not really the HR, exec. It's 8 people is pretty good. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because it depends on who those 8 people were.
Yes. I mean, look, I commend everybody who did it because I was, my mouth dropped at the end of this process. Like I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on posting it on different sites and so forth. And I was like, that is less than 10% of people who applied. Like we're talking about
Hmm.
3% of people who applied actually followed the instructions. 3% of people read the job post and did as they were told. So automatically, if you did not follow the instructions, you were not even considered because what I did
Yeah.
to make my life easier is I put a filter on my email.
Mm.
Because I know how to use Google. So I put a filter on my email, and anybody, all the people who applied or anybody who applied that did not write the word nimble, it went to trash.
Yeah.
That's it. I didn't even look at it. So
Yeah.
the only people that showed up in my inbox that actually got my attention were those 8 people that wrote the word nimble. That's it. So you literally disqualify yourself from a job just by not reading. So, I hear this a lot from young people and people entering the job market, and people who are, looking for work and looking for well-paid work and so forth. Oh, the good jobs are not out there and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm sure out of those 350 people, a lot of them were qualified to work for me.
Hmm.
But they disqualified themselves by not reading the instructions. So there was actually one candidate that I'm actually going to meet again. He was a young fellow, did not have the experience that I required on the bookkeeping side of thing, like the Gmail and all that stuff. He was good, but he's like, I've never really done bookkeeping. But he wrote, he followed the instructions, and at the end he wrote, I know I don't have the experience, but I'm, very eager to learn. And if you give me a chance, I promise I'll learn on my own, and I will make sure that I'm ready to go when you hire me. And I was like, see, I like that as an initiative. Like this shows me that this guy is going to, be very capable and learn by himself and take it upon himself to learn new tools and new things. So I was like, I gave him a chance, and he's, pretty much the front runner of the process, just because of that kind of, he acknowledged what he didn't know. He told me how he's going to fix it. And I was like, well, that's pretty solid. But, out of the 8 people, a couple of people just didn't qualify, just didn't work for me. But I do have to say, out of the 8 people that I spoke to 8 people, because I gave everybody who followed the instructions, I gave them a chance, 15-minute Zoom call just to see if there was a fit. Because I was like, the percentage is so low, these people must be somewhat special. like they must be, kind of somehow different than the rest of the pack, right? Because they actually followed instructions. So, 4 of the people it wasn't the right fit. The other 4 seemed to be good people, go-getters and stuff like that. So, I'm continuing the process. But I mean, the whole point of this video, and something that I as we were talking earlier, is, it actually isn't that hard to get good paying work. I think the problem that I see as an employer is that people do not follow instructions and they disqualify themselves.
It would be interesting to see the demographic of the 200 people, the 150 that immediately dropped out of the running. It would be interesting to see what age group they are, and what experience level they do have. I mean, you did this on LinkedIn, right? So it should say somewhere in their profiles that LinkedIn analytics would say like, okay, well, this person has 6 years of this and whatever it might be. Because I would be willing to bet that a lot of the people who didn't follow the 2 simple instructions that you added were highly qualified, but they're just over it. They're like, no, I see the requirements, like just the numbers. So I'm going to like blast out my application. I don't need to pay attention to the rest. And the people who were underqualified read every single word and did it all. And like this guy said, you know what, I don't actually meet your requirements, but I will.
Yeah,
I can.
I think you're right. So out of the 8 people, if I have to qualify it in terms of age brackets, like just kind of big age brackets, I would say 5 out of the 8 were below 30.
Okay.
And then there was 2 that were 30 to 50 and 1 that was 50 plus.
Okay.
So the majority are younger people. So the one thing that I like about that is, there's a lot of, older adults and so forth that are like, oh, this generation, it's going downhill and they don't know what they're doing and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, you know what? It kind of reignited my, it reignited my passion, I guess, for having younger staff and people who are a little bit more energetic, because I'm like, well, the younger people are actually following the instructions more so than the older people. And like you said, the people who are older or more experienced may think like, oh, if they want me, that they can come get me. But at the same time, if you want a job that pays more than what is offered in the market, like you got to just do a little effort. Again, 1 sentence, 1 word in a subject line is like a 5-minute thing. And if you're not willing to spend 5 minutes to satisfy my requirement, well, I'm not going to bother even spending my time on you. It's cool to see that the young people, I mean, listen, 8 out of 350 is not that much, but the majority of the 8 were younger demographic. But I was like, you know what? All hope is not lost on the younger people and the things that people are saying that younger people are lazy and so forth. In fact, I felt like the out of the candidates that I met, there were 2, and both of them were in the younger demographic. 2 that I liked that I'm going to continue kind of interviewing to see if I like the older ones, and the people that had more experience just didn't have the drive. They're just they just seemed unmotivated. It just seemed like
And
a
that's the
little,
attitude they would bring into to work,
yeah.
into
And
the
like,
office.
what can you do for me kind of thing, where I
Hmm.
feel like at least at the beginning of your relationship with an employer, it should be like, what can I do for you versus what can the
Yeah.
employer do for me? And then as it grows and there's trust and I feel like you're bringing value to the company, then obviously there's going to be a little bit more on my end. But at the beginning, it should be a little bit kind of, what are you going to bring
Well,
to me?
and it's like a learning period, because neither of you know each other yet. Like, yeah, you know them on paper and they know you based on your website and maybe on paper, but that's sort of it. You don't have a relationship yet. So you can't really have high expectations aside from what your responsibilities are.
Yeah. Well, and also the funny part about all this is, after all this, when I finished a couple of the interviews with some of the older demographic people, um, they this was like a 20-ish minute Zoom call, and I'm just trying to get to know the candidate to see if they're a right fit. So just in my opinion, and I think a lot of people are going to disagree with this, but I don't feel like it's the time for the candidate to ask me too many questions about my company and what I do and so forth. This is let me get to know you. Let me get to know who you are as a candidate. And if I like you and I invite you, because I did preface this by saying this is just an introductory interview. And, if things go well, we'll meet again in person
Mm.
and kind of take it there. So they knew that there would be another opportunity. But the older demographic people were asking very specific, kind of in-depth questions to me that took the call longer than the 20 minutes that I had scheduled. Um,
Ah.
and I was like, it's cool. I guess, you have questions. It's fine. I'm not here to hide anything or whatever, but it's just not the right time to ask the questions because I may
No.
not be interested in you as a candidate. So you're wasting my time in addition to your
Well,
time.
and if you've already dedicated 15 minutes, you've said, let's hop on a 15-minute call. It's not 15 minutes and then let's see. It's just, towards the end of the 15 minutes, that person, if they want more information, if they have questions, they should say, I know we're approaching 15 minutes. Can I ask you a few questions, or should we schedule another call later?
Yeah.
Or should I
I
just write you
mean,
an email?
yeah, that could be it. But also, I mean, just to drive the point home from my perspective is if I don't
Yeah.
contact you and tell you I want another interview,
Yeah.
I don't really have much interest in answering your questions, right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
it's not going to work, and don't waste your time and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, we're all busy. I own a business. I have staff. I have to answer a lot of things. I mean, I'm okay with answering a question or two, but sometimes it gets a little lengthy. And I think as a candidate, if I'm going into a job and I'm told like it's a multi-step process in terms of interview. If it was like one interview and I'll tell you if you're hired or not, yeah, then by all means ask your questions to see if you want to, work for me or whatever the case is.
Mm.
But I think if it's a multi-step process and you know that there's going to be a second interview, I think you should wait for the second interview to ask any questions
Yeah.
because it seems rude. I don't know. Do you agree? It seems a little bit rude to me. I don't know. Like I wouldn't go in and ask like a lot of questions about the job, knowing that I may not be the chosen candidate to begin with,
Right.
right? Like, or at least one of the chosen candidates. So, I mean, it was just that's just kind of like a small detail that I thought that was interesting,
Hmm.
comparing the two kind of older and younger demographics. But I do
I mean,
feel
I
like,
do think that it. I think there are a lot of coaches or interview prep that say the counselors say you should ask more questions. You should ask questions like this because it shows your interest in the company and that you've done some research and you kind of know what it is. Also, depending on who it is, like HR questions are different than team lead questions. But there are other coaches that say, don't do anything until you like get the vibe that they're interested. So I think people are stuck in the middle. Like maybe they just didn't know yet. I wouldn't write them off just because they were a little bit too eager, but I think if I were the interviewer, I'd say, okay, wait, actually time is up.
Well, yeah, you know what? I guess that's a good perspective. I didn't necessarily write the people off because they asked questions. Not at all. I had put like 30 minutes in my calendar, was hoping to be done in 20. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah, sure.
myself a little buffer. But you are right, because I know that a lot of times, especially when I was younger and I was at a university, they would always say, go prepared with questions so you can look
Hmm.
interested in the job and blah, blah, blah. And then when I, flip the switch and I'm the person interviewing, I see that that may not be the best strategy. So my advice would be, first, if it's a one-time interview, then yes, by all means, you should ask your questions, because it's important for you to know if that's the job you want to take, if it's the company you
Yeah,
want to join and stuff like that. But if you know it's a multi-step one, you may want to reserve your questions for the second interview, just because
sure.
just trying to get to know you, and there's really no time to kind of go over that
Hmm.
the extra questions, and it may annoy the recruiter a little bit if you're asking, if you're too wordy and so forth. So I guess it's also, I think, emotional intelligence, kind of like reading the room, like reading,
Yeah,
is
read the
this,
room.
yeah, exactly, is this the right time, is this, should I, if you ask one question and somebody's kind of looking down at their watch, or you gotta
Yeah,
kind of
which
get
is
these
also paying
cues.
attention to detail, which is part of the job.
Ah, excellent, Alex. Yes. So, I mean, I just think I wanted to do a quick. We're recording this because I thought it was so interesting for any business owner, anybody looking to hire somebody, and even for people who are looking for employment.
Mm,
I hear this all the time. It's so hard to get a job that pays well, and and it boggles my mind. I got 350 applicants, and 8 people did what I asked. So you actually
right.
have very little competition. If you're competent, you have almost no competition. It's wild, but it's not as a competitive market as people make it out to be, because all you have to do is pay a little bit of attention and nurture the application a little bit, like follow up.
Sure.
Don't be annoying, don't like email 100 times or whatever, but read the whole thing, follow the instructions. For example, if somebody asks you for experience as an EA and you don't have
Mhm.
any experience as an EA, you might want to put on your resume something that will make me
Yeah,
understand that you would understand this position. Like, I know a lot of people do things on
right.
the side, or volunteer positions, or they do things for themselves, or they may have a side gig or something. Like, if you put nothing on your resume about it, I
Right.
mean, I asked for 2 or 3 years of experience. So, like that candidate that I was telling you, he didn't have the
Hmm.
experience, but he gave me something. So I can kind of be like, oh, okay, so he doesn't, but he said he's a fast learner and he's going to take it upon himself. You have to
He
give.
sounds competent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it gives the employer the impression of like, okay, well, he hasn't or she hasn't been an EA, but here are the things that this person has done that
Mm.
would qualify them or whatever. So,
Or
I
let
mean,
you know that they can catch on to what they have to do to the role.
exactly. I mean, you're applying for an EA position. If you were a waiter before, it's not going to be really applicable. But maybe you're a waiter and you do gigs on Fiverr as a virtual
Right.
assistant, and not enough to say it's a job, but you've done it. So why don't you include that in your resume, or write something like a little kind of paragraph of what skills you have that will qualify you for this position, right? Because
Hmm.
a lot of people just assume, oh, well, they'll call me and I'll explain. No, you're not even going to get that call if you don't even
Right.
explain it.
Why expect the time of day? You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a very interesting process. I like to share with everybody in my
Mm.
audience. Just, we talk about payments, we talk about conversions and all this stuff, but like this is another kind of business challenge I find, because hiring the right person, especially when you're a smaller company, it's huge. This person's going to make a big impact for my day to day, for my company, for my sales team, for my people in support. So because they're going to be, I call myself, let's say, the head of the company. I think about
Mhm.
strategies, what we're going to do, but my EA is pretty much the neck. It's directing me. Where am I looking? Where am I going? Right. So I need somebody that's super competent, that's going to follow, I talk fast, I think fast. They need to be able to take notes and kind of keep up and stuff like that. So I think it's a very important topic regardless. I know it's not about payments and it's not about conversions, but I am very confident if I hire the right person, I'm going to make more money. So it's always relevant on a business level. So
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, Alex, you and I met because you did almost the same thing, right? Like I found you on Fiverr because I gave you a couple
Hmm.
of gigs. You are super responsive, always delivered everything on time, asked for feedback and so forth. And I was like, oh, and now what? It's been like 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer.
Yeah.
We've been together, and it was meant to be like a one-off gig on Fiverr. And now it's been like 4 years. You're with me and working and doing all kinds of projects. So the moral of the story here is there is plenty of opportunity if you just do what you're asked. If you, like I do this, and I'm not trying to say this in a condescending way. I do this for my clients too. Like, what else can I do to help you? Do you need this? Do you need that? Like, everybody's in the service business some way or another, right?
Sure.
So just make sure whoever you're speaking with, like, I wouldn't have a business if I wasn't like this with my clients, right? If I
Right.
didn't say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, like, what else do you need? Do you need this extra service? Like, this can benefit you. When they ask me for things, I have to deliver. So it's the same thing whether you're, an owner of a company, an employee of a company, or a contractor, whatever the case is. You have to make sure that your audience, or the people you're serving, are being served well. So anyway, just kind of in closing, I
Mm.
mean, I think it gives a lot of people in the younger generation some hope that they're more technologically advanced, they're quicker to learn, and if they just follow instructions, I think that you will get
You'll
the
get far.
rewards. Yeah, you'll get far. I mean, like I said, the
Yeah.
candidates that I'm kind of considering, when I posted the ad, I was not considering somebody young, because I was like, well, I need somebody with more experience, somebody who's seasoned and so forth. But I'm kind of starting to change my mind now. I'm starting to think that maybe somebody who is just like kind of willing to learn and then push, and more, I would say, more character based than experience based, I think is kind of where I'm headed now, which is funny because 2 weeks ago I was like, no, I want somebody that's, been doing this for a long time, blah, blah, blah. And, so anyway, it's
Yeah,
a
rigid
learning experience.
requirements.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Alex, it was nice talking to you about this topic, and I hope everybody listening, you found some value in this, because I would definitely suggest, whether you're a recruiter or a small company looking to hire somebody, add a little small requirement on the job post. You'll weed out a lot of unqualified people and people who are just not, for your company. And it could be anything really. Like for me, I need somebody who's attention to detail, but for you, it might be somebody who's salesy. So you want them to give you like a paragraph to sell you something, or
Mm.
whatever the case is. But like a little small 5-minute extra requirement will weed out, apparently for me, 97% of the candidates. So there you go. Didn't need a recruiter there. I just kind of figured it out on my own. So that's pretty awesome. Well, thanks, Alex, for talking about this. I think it was pretty informative for a lot of people. I think if you're, like I said, if you're hiring, I learned this trick from somebody who also had some similar issues with me in hiring, and hope you're going to use it and pass me some feedback if it worked for you and your company.